Hey everybody, in this week's episode, we're lucky to have seasoned information technology and healthcare leader, Katie McCullough. During the episode, Katie shares her over 25 years of healthcare and IT experience as Katie and I talk through her top 5 tips leaders should consider if they want to start up and maintain a high-functioning project management office or PMO for their organization. I'm very fortunate as Katie gave me a chance when she hired me to bridge the gap between public safety, incident management, and kind of program and project management proper. Hope you enjoy this conversation. Get your notepads ready. Get these top 5 things. Start your PMO off on the right foot. Before we jump into this episode, let's hear a little bit more about the Kev Talks podcast. Hello and welcome to the Kev Talks podcast. This is the podcast for anyone interested in hearing industry-leading best practice processes, particularly from people in the healthcare, technology, and public safety spaces. Lessons learned or shared and knowledge passed on through facilitated conversations or solo episodes with host Kevin Pinnell. That's me. Kevin shares his 20-plus years of experience as a U.S. Navy veteran, public safety professional, and healthcare IT program and project manager. In the end, this podcast has a little something for everyone, especially those who want to make progress in their personal and professional lives. Of all the things I've done, the most vital is coordinating the talents of those who work for us and pointing them towards a certain goal. Walt Disney. The goal of today's episode is for me to get a chance to talk to Katie McCullough, who's been in healthcare for over 25 years and who hired me and saw the crossover skills from my time in all hazard incident management and public safety and took a chance on me. And I'm very appreciative for that. And it led me to this podcast and to being a senior project manager. And today we're going to learn how to build a better project management office with Katie McCullough. Katie, thank you very much for being on the Kev Talks podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. You were one of my best hires, I will say.
Thank you very much. That means a lot. You've done a lot, and we'll touch on, all the great things that you've done, in particular, the evolution that I got to see, which was great of, from the ground up, building a project management office. But can we share some with listeners, a bit about you, where you grew up, what led you to kind of where we met when you were the director of the project management office, and just learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, be glad to. Pretty much mostly from Virginia. Grew up in Virginia, and father was a preacher. My mother was a teacher. So I was destined to go into some kind of helping profession, right? So really went into college not exactly knowing what I wanted to do, but did love leading people. And actually, ironically, well, I don't know if it was ironic, but it was funny because I ended up in biology and chemistry.
Oh, wow.
I just loved the science. But also the college I went to was small and it afforded me a lot of leadership opportunities that I might not have gotten if I had gone to a big university. So that was pretty neat. So when I got out of school, with science being a real interest for me, I kind of worked for a couple of years and then went towards to get my master's in health administration. As I came out of that, I got into the quality improvement, patient safety, regulatory background, and really spent the better part of my career in quality improvement. And I think about quality improvement, it's based in fundamental project management principles, right? PDSA and Six Sigma and all the different principles that are in quality improvement are also in project management.
Okay.
So really spent 20 years in hospital-based quality improvement, process improvement, patient safety, and was running projects, leading projects, and then ended up in a leadership role at a senior level, and then saw technology really kind of taking over healthcare and electronic health records coming into play, and seeing quality being measured by the electronic health record. So I just kind of started turning towards information technology. So, and thought, well, I know nothing about information technology, but I do know how to run
Oh,
projects.
there you go.
I do know hospitals. So I turned about 9 years ago towards IT project management.
Okay.
And then just, really enjoyed it in the healthcare setting. And had the opportunity to apply for a director position. Again, my love of leadership roles, and ended up being the director of the IT Project Management Office.
For when
So,
for the quality improvement work that you did kind of pre heavier into IT or in IT, but still in healthcare, and not as measured, I guess, with like an electronic health record interactions and, things like that. What kind of work was it that was different than working quality improvement with an electronic health record, or when you got into doing more project management leadership with a electronic health record?
I think, so you're thinking about the differences between the
I
two?
think so. Like, so when you say, you weren't really in IT, but then you started seeing electronic health records, really as a way, or that could measure the quality or performance improvement or things like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
How did you do this similar kind of work, not necessarily connected to an EMR, before you kind of made that transition?
So I think what it was the project management principles that you apply and the methodology I was applying when, let's say, I would get a new regulation or a new patient safety initiative came to play. And so I would plan it out just like I would in a formal project management, position.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the QI world, it's not as structured. Once you start turning towards information technology, it becomes a little bit, you have to really be careful about defining your scope. And, there's a clear beginning and a clear end. And in quality improvement, it's just not as formalized, I guess,
Okay.
or as having the title of project manager as a formal title.
Okay.
You're doing project management. I always say that, technically we're all project managers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So some of us just do it as a formal occupation because these are highly complex projects that need to be, managed and carefully led through their life cycle. Yeah, so a lot of the similar, before I would roll out a patient safety initiative, it would still have the same kind of phases that a formal project would, like when you're implementing a new system.
Mm-hmm.
So
Would you have to like get metrics a little bit different than you would, with a reporting system that's built into the electronic health record versus, outside of that? It was kind of different tools, but still getting folks through a process, it sounds like.
yeah, I think there's also a lot of similarities in that. I mean, certainly in performance improvement and patient safety, you're always wanting to set up those KPIs, we call them, and more in the business side. But what are those measures that are going to tell me that I've been successful in this initiative? So let's say it's we're implementing a patient safety initiative for two patient identifiers, and every time a clinician is about to give a medication, they're going to ask you your name and date of birth. How can we measure, well, beforehand, how people are doing on that? Are they asking it? Maybe we do a study, take a 2-week time period, and we kind of measure and observe and see if people are actually carrying out that patient safety practice.
Okay.
And then we'll implement some interventions, whether it be, education or, new policies or new ways of trying to increase the percentage of time that people are using that practice.
Okay.
And so it would be the same in a project So IT project, you're going to want to say, well, how do I know that this project has been of benefit? You know, what benefits can I gain from implementing this system? So similar type, approach and performance improvement.
Cool. Yeah, obviously important to know you're going to get your money's worth, your time's worth, and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting you say, we're all project managers. That was, I remember, an early discussion we had, which again, I appreciate, of thinking, hey, I'd like to do this formally, and just the crossover of I think two big things. I think if you're a good leader, you could probably lead a team of almost any skill set. And
Yeah.
then to your point about, we're all managing projects, like project management, which is funny because some folks are like, I don't know what you guys do. It's like, but when do you, and I don't want to say like it's not hard, because it is, but it also,
Yeah. Yeah.
folks could do it. And you're like, here's the things you do. And I, have this foundational 5 things, and there's basic principles, and all that. But if you can get people together and get them talking and working together, you could probably do that in any industry, which is interesting. So it's neat to hear you say that now, and have seen and learned from you how to recognize, hey, you should grab a before, so you can know if the after was worth it, or what we got out of it and stuff. That's a huge benefit to project management. And I don't want to spoil any of the building a good PMO or any of those tips, but to your point about improving things, there's a lot, just seeing what's out there, whether it's employment or business growth, entrepreneurs, all these kinds of things. There's a lot of need, I think, out there. I've seen on Reddit, on LinkedIn, for companies, organizations, divisions, to have structure to build something like a project management office. And so
Right.
as we get into sharing, from you as the director of PMO, and now helping other folks do that, how, just to start off, how would you define a project management office for folks listening that are interested to get that started, or maybe they're just starting one up and still kind of working through that?
Sure. Yeah, I ran across a quote the other day that I thought was a great way to sum up what a PMO does for an organization. That's funny you say that about, what do you do? Because my
Mhm.
mother, to this day, my mother still doesn't understand what I do.
Right.
So I might use this quote for her, but what it is project management office is the conductor of your project orchestra. Without a PMO, projects execute independently and in an uncoordinated manner. And I think that really sums it up. It can be of great value to the business. Think of, especially in the technology space, how many dependencies there are amongst all the different technologies. So,
Right.
when you have a PMO, then you have a group that knows what projects are happening, knows what the roadmap is for the future, and can help the business, in this case, IT, kind of plan out the strategy for the next few years as far as what projects will be taken on.
Yeah, it seems a huge value, that 30,000-foot level of everything that's happening, because it's easy. I know for me, is if I'm on a single project and there's other projects going on in parallel, I don't always have visibility into those, let alone different business departments and that. And so it sounds like a PMO can really, if someone has a question on, is this already being worked on, or is this a need, that's the place that should be able to kind of see the whole portfolio and all the different programs that are happening.
Yeah, it also, I think it cuts down on a lot of waste.
All right.
Um, if you have people that are independently just starting their projects in a silo in different parts of the organization, there could very easily be things that their dependencies that have not been shared. And so let me just explain the example I actually had today
Oh, wow.
at my client, where in this organization, it was they're trying to go towards one badge
Okay.
for the entire health system. It's a huge health system, huge, multiple facilities, 24 hospitals. And they just started. And, now they're, oh gosh, they're like 3 years into their project. And they were like, oh, well, we have all these different dependencies on technology.
Mm.
Had they had a PMO or a project management office in that IS space, then in governance in place, which we'll talk about in a little
Sure.
bit, that would have come to light before they ever started that project. So now what's going to happen is they've started this massive project. They're probably going to have to pause and wait for IS to get the technology on our roadmap. So that's just a shame, and just kind of wasted energy there.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing how awesome technology is and how easily it's not included sometimes, because it's just there and it's so instant. So I've, feel like some of the thought is like, oh, we could just turn that on. We can just connect these things, and it's like
plug and play.
Yeah. Which I guess is good, maybe from the customer standpoint, that it seems easy.
Right.
But and not expecting them to know the behind this, the curtain secrets of how everything works. They just want it to work, obviously. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that, especially, years into it.
Right.
Is quite a delay. But so fortunately we have you here to help folks avoid those kind of things. So if you, or how you did, and for folks listening, grab your notepads, because Katie's going to share some things on what you would consider or what you've done, best practices to start up a project management office, to, I think, help avoid some of those mistakes and really help, people be efficient. So what is, and we're going to do, I think, 5 of these or so, however many we want to do. So kick us off. How should we start, or what do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, well, what I'll start with first sometimes is can be challenging. But you do need to find that strong executive leader, who is going to support the PMO. When I think about the executive leader, and in this case, I'll, defer to IT. In this case, it's the CIO. I mean, that we worked with a very, very strong leader when I was there,
right,
in the CIO position. I think about that leader providing three primary things. One, like I said, they can advocate and explain the value of the PMO to the organization. The CIO that we worked for, always said, the project managers are the face of our department.
all right. Good point.
They're out front communicating with executives, giving status reports, escalating issues and such. And so it's really, it's an important role. So a strong executive leader who can advocate and explain the value of project managers and the project management office to the organization. And the only way they can do that is if they maintain a strong relationship with the rest of the leaders in the organization. They have to be viewed as a partner. This is certainly true in IT. It can't be an us versus them, kind of mentality. And then those two things really allow that leader to commit to governance at an organizational level. And that's where, the PMO can really help support the organization in showing what projects are in flight, what's the project health, are we doing the right things for the organization? What's our, are we selecting our projects based on our business strategy, right?
Right.
And, it's critical to have that governance piece. Somebody needs to say, no, not now.
Right.
We don't have the resources. Or no, it's not aligned with the business strategy. And you know, an executive leader who's the advocate for that governance is key.
I was going to say, and that sounds like if there's pushback from other executives, that's where the whole, escalation is not a 4-letter word thing comes in, where that advocate can be the one that, that carries that message you were talking about, where, someone in a high position wants something, but it's for like that person versus, 200 people, and balancing that workload. Seems to be a lot of value in having that advocate to have those tough conversations with the leadership.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I would say that is definitely number one.
And for the governance part, and let me know if this is part of one of the other ones, but is that how would you recommend folks kind of grade? There's probably a lot of options, right? But if you have that, the executive leader and they advocate for governance, and you talk about aligning with the business needs, and of course there's competing business needs across the businesses. What is kind of a couple quick hits that folks could use, or tips to prioritize between everyone's, high priority business need?
Yeah. I think, one thing I found successful together with the CIO doing on the working on the governance is establishing some criteria by which you're going to identify your projects. So there are certain projects that are non-negotiable. Maybe a regulatory mandated date, you have to do it. It may be keep the lights on. It may be something that in technology space, you have to upgrade, otherwise you can't maintain the system. So I think defining that with the executives to say, okay, there's a fundamental, there are some fundamental basics that we have to cover before we can start doing the really cool stuff. And we don't have unlimited resources. So whether it be human labor or even dollars. So we have to be mindful of that. So I think, the education of executive leaders at a governance level, like really making sure you're being deliberate about who's on that group, and then it's a group that meets on a standing basis. Really, you can't. So anyway, the swim lanes that we identified, the must-dos, the requireds, that helps.
Okay.
And of course, you get to the stuff that everybody wants, which is the cool stuff.
Right.
You really need that group to have some criteria by which they're going to prioritize their projects. So it may be, it directly impacts our strategic initiatives that could be weighted high. You could have, it directly impacts the customer experience. I mean, you could create all sorts of criteria by which that group is going to prioritize the efforts, and you try to make them as objective as you can. Of course, ideally you want to end up with a rank ordered list.
Right.
But you can still kind of move stuff around. But you just got to try to make it as objective as you can, and with a scoring algorithm. So then that way it's a place to start versus everybody just kind of starting with emotions and,
Yeah, that's a great point of, taking the subjectivity out of it. And the big stuff, like you mentioned, especially in healthcare IT, regulatory safety things seem to quickly rise to the top. It's like, it's hard to argue with those kind of things, which is good. But then even this could affect our bottom line, money, things that impact money. But that's a great point on make your criteria objective. So it's less of a argument or discussion or emotional. It just is.
Well, and even we do have safety as a swim lane for the must-dos. Well, it's really important that you get that group to agree upon a definition for that. So the definition we had was, prevents a safety event, and based on best practice or based on evidence, has to be handled electronically. So that really kind of narrows down what falls into that safety bucket, because in healthcare, everything's safety, right?
Right.
So everything could be number one.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and when the safety folks are saying it's safety, then it's already got validity to it. Right. They're like,
Yeah, it's really tough. That's why having that specific definition to kind of refer back to
sure.
and say, is there a way does it have to be handled electronically? Or like the example I always give with that is barcode med administration.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a best practice that, before giving a med, they've stopped asking the name and the date of birth, and they actually scan you, right?
Right.
They scan your. So that's best practice. And the only way you can do that is electronically.
Sure.
So that kind of helps, with that negotiation of, I want my project to go before your project, kind of thing.
That makes sense. So we've got our executive leader, or we're working to get that supports the PMO, that's going to advocate the value of it, partner with the org, and commit to a governance model. And we touched on that a little bit on, kind of some ideas to set those up, be as objective as possible. What's our next step to building a high performing and efficient PMO?
I think the other thing is showing pictures. So visuals, metrics and data that are showing capacity versus demand to your leaders, to your executives, to that governance group. Now, some people get a little scared by that because there are fancy project management tools that are out there. Microsoft Project, it has portfolio module, there ServiceNow, do I need to do timesheets so I can show actuals? I mean, it can get very overwhelming and complicated, but honestly, you can start with a fancy Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
I've gotten some great tools there's an advisory company called Infotech that I've used a lot. You have to be a member, your organization, but they have some great tools and templates that I used before we had a professional project management tool,
right,
like a project. And you can show pretty high level demand versus capacity. Like demand could be as simple as a t-shirt size.
Right.
This project is small, medium, large, extra large. What does that translate into hours? And then looking on the capacity side, you can look at it at a pretty high level. But what I've seen is that when the PMO is able to provide that, it makes a world of difference to help the organization in deciding, okay, we're going to start this project now versus we're going to start it when we actually have the resources to complete it.
Okay.
And the reason why that translates into a high performing PMO is because if you have no governance and you're not restricting that demand, you're not going to be making anybody happy. You're not going to be completing anything on time, within scope, or on budget. So
good point.
And then that reflects poorly on the PMO, which is not their fault.
Right.
Trying the best they can. But there's got to be some constraints on the demand. And the only way you can explain that really is showing that picture. Like we had a heat map where we showed, red, yellow, green, and okay, our interface team for the next 6 months is clearly in the red, like they're way over capacity. So how are we going to address that? Well, we can start this project that's interface heavy in another 6 months, or we could supplement with contract labor. And then you say, hey, governance, if you really, really want to start this now, then we need the budget to hire more contractors. So
is that a way too where you can use in a good way the data and show the metrics and that is a way you could do that, because you just said it. Really, to rephrase my question, when you queue up a decision like that, would you recommend that folks, like for you as the PMO director that's building, the team, or once it's established and you just need a high level decision, would you take really a recommendation along with that data as opposed to just kind of
Yeah,
leaving here's the stuff,
that's
you guys look at it and decide, you know what I mean?
oh yeah, great point. Yeah, definitely take a recommendation. Matter of fact, it was funny because as our governance group really matured, and again in this governance group, the CIO was one voting member, so it was made up of the business,
Right.
right? And then the PMO supported it. But I had a executive say, I guess this is the president of the physicians, and he was like, why don't you guys just go ahead and tell us, exactly what you think we should do? Because when I read your slide, I can pretty much tell what you want to do.
Right.
So why don't you just go ahead and tell us what, just bottom line it for us? I was like, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much am trying to lead you there. So I'll just say what I think you should do.
Yeah. And it seems like that could work and does work, whether it's at the individual project level and it's like we need a decision on X more dollars, or to do these things or not, and this will happen, or to your point, like all this, a whole office of that, or division or something. Of it seems like executive leaders, one, they're not in the weeds like we are, right? And so they
Right.
don't have the detail nor have the time to do that. And so I feel like it would be helpful for them and they would appreciate it, as opposed to, even if you have good data and it's sitting there and nice pictures, which, I love a good PowerPoint slide. And then, to kind of help guide them to your point, and to hear that, they said that one, and they pick up on it because they're also very smart people, right? So they know what's happening, but it's cool to hear the
Well,
value of that.
yeah, and I think too, when we showed him that visual, it was in the very beginning of when we were starting up the PMO and we were starting up governance. So we kind of shared with them, here's how we're going to make our recommendations for you.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we didn't actually show them the picture every single time. It got to the point where once they saw what we were capable of producing and what we were using to try to help guide them, as long as they're, again, it goes back to that executive leader and the trust and the partnership. As long as those executives trust and have a partner in that executive leader, then they're like, okay, I see how you all are making your recommendations on when we should start this project.
Okay.
So when you make that recommendation in the future, I'm going to know in the back of my head, yeah, they're using that, heat map, or they're using actual data to make decisions, not just whoever screams the loudest kind of thing.
Gotcha. That's good. So you built credibility from the start using those tools and with the advocate.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. We've got our executive leader helping us drive things. We're using pictures, data, metrics, which can really speak for themselves and it seems like too, the challenge before that is, what do we want these metrics to be, and how will they be most valuable? So it seems like there's some upfront work there before you can kind of use them as a tool to get decisions and leverage, buy-in and things like that.
Right.
Exactly. So what's our third thing to get this high performing PMO going?
Yeah. So hiring the right people. Like I said, those project managers are the face of your project management office, in your department for whatever PMO it's supporting. And, in this case, IT, from my work with PMO offices. But, I think with this, it's, and I always love it when you give that example about yourself, because I think hiring the right people is about, for project managers, it's really about leadership aptitude. Not that leadership can't be taught, but I think there is a fundamental, there's certain soft skills that I think a project manager you need to hire for, right?
Yep.
Kind of pick up pretty quickly if there's somebody that is pretty, is able to be assertive when they need to be, or what have you. So I really look at when I hire the right people, I'm looking for skill sets. I'm looking for skill sets in your case that can be applicable easily over into the project world. And a lot of it is about leadership, and it's also about communication skills.
Oh, right.
Um, you know, everybody's always like, oh, do you require the PMP? Do you require the PMP? And I'm like, the project management professional credential is a really good credential. And I always encourage project managers to go obtain it.
Right.
But it doesn't automatically mean you're going to be a good project manager.
We 100% aligned. So if anyone's listened to this podcast for any period of time, they've heard me say that, agree, because a lot of folks think that's which it could be from a resume search, their entry point in, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're good.
No.
Or not even good, but can do it. And not to bust on that, because I got my PMP. Absolutely. But yeah, to your point, it's I'm just laughing because I'm just 100% in alignment with that. And it's good to hear you confirm that thought. But yeah, I mean, a lot of folks, it seems, talk about it as a way to get the skills or learn how to do the job versus this is a good credential to have as I mature my career, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, it's well respected. It's recognized. It does teach you fundamentals. And they'll be the first to say, you take the project management body of knowledge, you're not going to open up the book and do your project like that.
Right.
So what does that mean? Well, that means as a project manager, you have to use that critical thinking skills, right? And those leadership skills to know, okay, well, I'm in the planning phase right now, but I'm also jumping to this phase, and that's okay because,
Gotcha.
Or I have this issue. What do I do with it? It's just not cookie cutter, right? You know that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So you got to have those critical thinking skills to be able to navigate that. And it's not like you can open up the body of knowledge and run your project like that.
Right. Yeah. One of the best examples of that, I think, is from there in the exam, and it says your sponsor is going to bring you the charter. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. That's that's the greatest thing. Now, shout out to any sponsor that's ever done that. Thank you on behalf of all PMs. As we spoke before, most execs don't have time to do that. So, which is interesting.
You can write them one and make sure it's cool. Does it have everything that you need in an executive sponsor? But yeah, you're right on the money there.
Would you, to your point about hiring good folks and those critical thinking skills and being able to kind of know where you need to be and just what you need to do, not necessarily tie it to the phase that matches the standard but the balance of that is there are standards, right? So you still got to meet them. But is that something you encourage when you hire folks and as you watch them work to, say, hey, do what we need to do to kind of accomplish the mission and do the required stuff, kind of balance that out?
Yeah, that actually funny. That leads me to my fourth one, which is project management tools and processes. You do have to have standards, but you need to be flexible. You need to meet the needs of the specific project at hand. They're all so unique. And the needs of the organization. I think there are some things that are, non-negotiables, like the project charter. Let's make sure everybody agrees that this is the fundamental basics of our scope.
Right.
There's the general outline of our timeline and all those kind of things you agree upon up front before you ever get started. But do you need a full-blown risk management plan for every project? No. I mean, it depends on the complexity of the project. And so you definitely need to, I think the PMO needs to establish those standards. One, everybody's it gives one look. And so that the organization and the business can, as you're presenting, a scope document, or as you're presenting your PowerPoint, it's got a consistent look,
right,
and feel, and the terminology is similar amongst all your project managers. It just makes it that much easier to, everybody in the business kind of knows what to expect and what the purpose of these documents are. I do think you can go overboard with documentation. I know that our nemesis, right?
Right. And what it sounds like, as part of that, it sounds like a branding strategy, right? And a standard. So but also shows kind of a professionalization, I guess, of the PMO, to your point. So like, oh, every one they have is like templated and it looks good. And it's, so
right.
So even if you're in like week 3 of the PMO being stood up, and you have this nice, like, hey, here's all our tools.
Right.
That first look is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And to your point, and one great thing that you did and allowed us to do was give feedback on those tools. And so your flexibility was much appreciated, but also your decision to say, you know what, we don't need all this extra stuff real early with like the charter, like, because it's so early. Just here's the money we know we have. Here's the things we're pretty sure we're going to do about by these times, and we agree we're going to try and hit these goals, and kind of will cement those up, as opposed to that really locked in waterfall, can't change at all, and then mixed with kind of some agility, which it seems like nowadays is kind of the way, unless you're like where my wife used, a software shop where it's just agile and scrum, and, or in some other industry where it's just, you're really getting feedback all the time. It seems like, and back to your point, knowing kind of where you are, but what you need to do, that there's more of that mix of kind of that agile waterfall, agile world of doing a mix of things.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I like that term, agile.
Yeah. I think it fits great. And we're even doing what we call stand-ups. And I think folks started doing that a bit, how per the Agile manifesto it was, but folks got together, they talked and worked things out, which was the whole point, right? Like to deconflict things and what are you working on, where are you going, and those kind of things. But
yeah, they're definitely, I think the industry, or not the industry, but the project management as a formal methodology, at least sometimes, we need to be agile, we need to do agile. And it's like, well, it really doesn't work for, like, if you just took agile, like as it's spelled out, and tried to do that in an IT shop that is purchasing all off the shelf solutions,
right?
You gotta make it some kind of hybrid between that and waterfall, because it just doesn't work. And I could definitely see why it was used in software development, though. Definitely.
Yeah.
Innovation projects.
Is that something you, to like, as a leader, whether it was in quality improvement or, leading a PMO, had to also kind of balance with your folks and with the organization, was not just adopting the trend because it's a trend?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's definitely a big one.
It is. Yeah. I mean, the agile too, you also have to remember, how does that impact the business, right?
Right.
Like, because you're not going to be, like, in IT, we're not going to be implementing the solutions by ourselves in a silo without including business, because we're doing it for the business. If you go strict agile, I don't even know how care could staff for that,
Right.
I mean, so anyway, I think there's a happy medium.
Cool. Yeah. It seems like waterfall blends itself great to start from, because to your point, whether you're a PM proper or you're in the business, it's pretty straightforward to say, we're going to start this thing, we're going to plan it, we're going to do it, and then we're going to close it. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, that's any language. And I know anyone that's hitting me on the language, I know those aren't the phases, but that's pretty much what you're doing, and then having to sprinkle in, like, oh, wait, this is different. 2 months later, let's change it. And that's okay. To your point earlier, but yeah, it seems like to go through all the different kind of things you can do with a pure agile world is one, just sitting here talking about it sounds like a nightmare to try and get people that aren't into it to do, let alone it
Well,
seemed like it was a challenge just to do the quote basic waterfall stuff, right?
there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's an important point. You have to have the entire organization on board.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, we've seen how hard it is just to get people on board with organizational change management, which is another piece of project management that is so you probably do a good podcast on that.
Yeah, I did. I tried to, I forget if a year or two ago. So when we did the ProSci, right, change management training, I
Yeah,
try and do like,
yeah,
if I get knowledge soon after one, it's frankly pretty
that's
easy content to then get. Like, so it's like, I
yeah,
learned this
yeah,
thing, I'll type this thing up, I'll talk about this thing.
yeah,
But yeah, so I shared that in the ADKAR model, and and that was another great thing that you did, and Tim, is let's implement that into our work. But I think similar, it's a different thing than agile, obviously. But for folks, go to kevtalkspod.com, search for change management. I did that episode, but that's also another new thing you have to teach folks,
right,
because there's steps folks have to do that are part of that process. It's not just we'll manage the whole change management for you. You just show up and make decisions. You know what I mean?
right.
Like, that'd be great to some extent, but then there wouldn't be that engagement. But yeah, to your point, the change management, and I think of note that it's not project management, which those seem to
Right.
be crossed right in discussions sometimes versus kind of, I don't know if they're totally overlaid or just working, in tandem. Have you seen organizations in your time that have both a standalone change management office that partners with a PMO, or have you seen it more where they're embedded, or the PMs or PMO trying to embed that change management work throughout the
Yeah.
process?
I mean, I definitely see it more embedded.
Okay.
Like the client I'm at now, they used to have a change management separate group. I think it shrunk, but because like all of us were constrained
Right.
by the economy and resources and all the constraints we have. Um, but yeah, the thing about like setting up that separate change management, department where they come and, become your change manager. I mean, that really does take a commitment from the top, and they
Mm-hmm.
really need to know what they're, why they're doing it, and, how they need to be part of the organizational change effort. So that, that's a big investment when you start going down that route of having a separate change management department. It'd be nice to have,
Right.
but like I said, you got to have buy-in from the top.
It also seems like a challenge then to, I think anytime, we need the skill set, which in this case is change management, that isn't, unless it's embedded from the beginning, I guess, too, right? So like knowing or having a good idea of the resources we need on our project or within the program and getting them as early as possible. I guess we would want to do that with change management folks also,
Yeah,
if we had that versus, hey, welcome 2 months into this. Let's get you up to speed and help us change the organization. It's
right, right.
always tough.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that makes
totally.
the have it embedded, or have, like we did, which is great. Have your folks get cross trained. And then but then yeah, to your point, if it's not a buy-in, then it's what balance of getting the work done do we do with getting the change management done versus
Right,
getting other folks to help with it. But good old change
right.
management. But yeah, ADKAR model. Seen some of that out there, as far as folks asking questions, and had some questions when I put the episode out. There's a few. That's it. What other change management models are you aware of other than ProSci?
I know there were others out there, but
Okay,
ProSci is really, yeah, the one that I'm really most familiar with.
cool. Yep, same. Awesome. So we are getting that buy-in from our executive leader. We're using pictures and data. They tell the story and kind of show validity. We're hiring the right folks, of course, that have good critical decision and decision making and thinking skills. being flexible, which is great, doing the work on what the org needs, not what the manual says. And what else do we need to do to stand up this high performing project management office?
I mean, I think that the other piece is, just continual work with your stakeholder relationships. And that would go from an individual PM level to a PMO leader level. And of course, the executive, if you have a strong executive that has strong partnership with the business, they're going to be maintaining that relationship. But I think the other important piece for a successful PMO is for those individual PMs to really, periodic check-ins with stakeholders to ensure that, you're meeting their needs and that you're communicating what you need to communicate. And that goes for the PMO as well. I think we did those, which if I recall, you performed very well on. But we did these, just simple project manager. It was in Forms. It was in Microsoft 365, a 10 questionnaire that went out to all the stakeholders after a project.
Right.
Or you could do it at certain points during the project, just to ask questions about, their participation in the project. How did your project manager perform? Were you feeling communicated with? Did you feel like issues were escalated appropriately? I think that helps. Hopefully it helps the project managers grow. There's an opportunity for comments too, and getting kudos at the end of a project is always good. That's a great way to show value of your PMO, because what we did was we did individual stakeholder assessments of the project managers at the end of a project. And then I was able to roll that up at the end of the year and then able to communicate, look, for the projects we completed this year, 95% of stakeholders, felt like they were, we were communicating effectively, or what have you, whatever the questions were. But keep it simple little forms, survey, and just kind of maintaining that relationship with those key stakeholders.
It also seems, I do remember the feedback, which also makes me think of the soft skills individually needed for a PM is some humility, because all the feedback you get isn't going to be perfect. Right. So like, understand that as clearly or as many times as you think you delivered a message, you didn't deliver the message, right? To somebody or whatever facet. And so I found that I found that helpful. Because, sometimes Megan got the best of me. Other times I was, mostly able to supplant that and like, yep, that's something that I need to work on or do better or focus on or something like that. But to your point, after a long or particularly challenging or a lot of whatever it is, it's nice to hear, oh, okay, they appreciated the work. Because as objective as either the standards are or the work we do, as projects can get emotional. Like, people are working their butts off, long hours. So that's a great tool. And I appreciated that y'all did that. It was nice to do. And I would imagine from a leadership perspective too, it can show why, hey, we need 2 more PMs for the workload. And look, everybody said our people are doing good, so, as opposed to nobody likes our PMO. So, or something, or not providing value. It seems like it has both, the nice feeling stuff and an objective value to grow it and improve, and for the people too. And I think that's for any, program or project managers out there, realize when you get feedback, you have to accept the good feedback and I like to say strengths and areas for improvement. Like, that's more flowery, right? Than bad feedback or whatever. Cause the feedback's not bad. It just depends on how you take it, I guess.
Yeah. I think, the other the other thing I saw happening too as the PMO matured, and it always made me feel really great, was when people started asking for project managers. That was pretty pretty nice. Or they would ask for specific project managers. Can we have Kevin? You know, and oh my gosh. So that's a good sign too. I think when the business is saying, hey, we've got this project that's about to start, I really need one of your project managers. That's kind of the anecdotal, like, you know, the surveys that I talked about are kind of the, you know, the data, but it is nice when they call up a PMO leader and request a project manager.
Yep, sure. It does feel good. And honestly, for me, in some of the projects or initiatives that are asked to help with, I got to put my emergency hat on a little bit. So I was like, oh, I like, I know, let's use it. And I used for deploying a bunch of devices, right, for the surge. I used incident command system forms because they worked.
Oh yeah, that was so
I was
cool.
like, here's where we're going and what day. Cool. And I actually did, and I don't think I did. I think I did a write-up or I prepared it. And so we had this thing called the planning P that was kind of our guide in the incident management world. And it's literally a big letter P. And at the leg of the P, the bottom, it's like something happens or there's an event and there's boxes in it. And it's like it's cool because it's kind of the schedule of the meetings you would have or the order, and then prep time in between each one. And I made actually a big template of that with like times on it.
I remember that.
And then, so there's also so then I made a project version of that. So that's what I was going to do. That one probably for video, because I don't know if you're like me, the listeners, like if I talk about something that I'm looking at, but you can't see it, it's probably, probably not helpful.
Definitely.
It's neat to do that. So yeah, I was like, oh wait, we have to do something really quickly. And it's kind of an emergency. Awesome. which is kind of weird, but I think to your point, like liking leadership, liking, you know, those emergent things. From my background, I kind of sit there and I'm excited to do it. I'm not like excited because I'm nervous. You know what I mean? So I think that helps. And to your point with folks that, not just my background, but, you know, quality improvement, do high things, and folks come from all the different, you know, kind of walks of life. But if they're used to put me in a situation, tell me what it is, okay, I'll pull the team together and help get them through it. Then I feel like that or leading, like you could do that in any industry, unless the exceptions I've seen kind of a lot is it what construction and engineering seem to want, like construction people and engineers to do project management a lot of time. But even there, I think if, you know, you had the relationships with the stakeholders that had the people on the team, but you didn't happen to have a technical expert that's also a PM, they could get folks through that, which was neat. But yeah, the feedback I started doing, I think I asked Tim about this too, but you know, what is it? 360-degree feedback, right? So I know my wife did that at her company and stuff, and same thing, good old forms, to your point, sometimes simple forms, just get it done. 4 questions. How am I doing? What can I do better? What other comments do you have? And I think that's a good tool for individual PMs to use, or if you're leading a program, to send to your team plus your stakeholders, and you get, it's really helpful, I think, for the development. So yeah, that the stakeholder engagement in the surveys was really helpful and should be really helpful for folks. And I feel like that maybe the anonymity of sending them something as opposed to asking in a meeting probably helped get more responses, maybe.
Right. Yeah. And I always had them send it back to me. And then, of course, I would turn it around to the project manager, de-identify it for them, because I didn't want them to, you know, hone in on who said what.
Right.
Of course, you know, occasionally there was somebody, like maybe there was a comment on the feedback, and I'd be like, well, you can pretty much guess who that was.
Right. Sometimes you can't totally de-identify who makes the comments, right? Like, which I guess speaks to having a good relationship with that person, or at least knowing them. But yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Awesome. So just to summarize, and then some closing thoughts maybe on again, effectiveness. So if we're going to build and how you've built high performing and effective project management offices, got to have executive leadership. to pave the way, to advocate for you. Gotta have data to back it up, the need, what you're doing, how you're providing benefit. Hire the right people, right, that can think on their own, but also work within the standards that are established. Be flexible, meet the organizational needs, not just conform only to the standard, or what has to happen per the plan. Don't fall in love with your plan because things change. And then stakeholder relationships, which is a great point of not just outside the PMO with the business, but also internally, and fostering those relationships. I think that it sounds like an awesome foundation for building a great project management office. And I know works because you've done it, and I've benefited from it and seen the evolution of really more challenging starts, and then and reporting and all this kind of stuff. But also, I think that's a good point too, is when you start up a PMO, it's not going to be a like fine running machine right off the bat. Right. Is that accurate? Yeah. And so both the PMs hired and the director or leader of the PMO probably shouldn't expect that.
Yeah, absolutely. Our CIO always asks the question, is it better than what we have now?
Oh.
If the answer is yes, move ahead.
Well, there you go. That's a great checkpoint.
Yeah, don't let perfect get in the way of better. I think was great advice. The other thing she always said to me was, listen to your gut, right? Well, I don't think we do that enough. But yeah, as far as the PMO, I think it's don't get caught up in making it perfect. Because whatever you do, you're moving forward. So
that's a great point. Well, folks have questions about this episode or interested in starting their PMO, or they're already doing that and they have challenges, how can folks reach out to you and connect?
Oh, yeah. They can connect on LinkedIn. We'd love that. Send me a message on there.
Okay. And it's Katie, Katie, and you spell your last name because I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, McCullough. It's McCullough.
Awesome. So Katie McCullough on LinkedIn, can definitely get your PMO started, give you some tips. Already selling your time for you for free here on the podcast. I really appreciate you coming on. I know we talked about this a bit ago, but it's great to get this time now with you and talk to you again and again. Thank you so much for taking the chance on me, giving me an opportunity, and giving folks listening an opportunity to learn from you. I think there's a lot of benefit here, and we'll change organizations through this episode. So thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be asked.
And that's a wrap. Thanks so much, everybody, for staying to the end of the episode, for listening to this great conversation with Katie McCullough, who was a great leader, friend, and I was glad to get her on this podcast. Please check out the kevtalkspod.com website. There's a lot more resources about program and project management, as I mentioned. Connect with me or follow on Twitter and Instagram at PennellKG, PNNELLKG. We have a Kev Talks Pod Facebook page, and you can support the show. There's a link right on the website. If you'd like to give a little bit, that'd be great. If not, it's still going to be free. Thanks so much, everybody. And remember, have a plan so you can keep your teams aligned. Stay informed with facts, not fear or rumors. Get involved so you can make a difference in the world. Godspeed.